Before I start the Flashcard Friday podcast, I want to talk about last Tuesday's puzzle. Unfortunately, I didn't get any correct answers. I have no winners to announce. But I did get an email from a college student who provided a very charming case for an extension. This guy was a total pro in his request. Almost like, I gotta say, he probably leverages his entire college career on extensions. I really like this kid. And this guy was so convincing and so charming and maybe even a little bit stoned. So thanks to David T. from ASU, the deadline is now December 31st. The first person to get their correct answers into hello@mathsciencehistory.com will be eligible for the $25 Amazon gift card and some Math Science History merchandise. Again, last Tuesday's time travel puzzle deadline has been extended to December 31st. The winner will be announced sometime in January when the podcast returns. So everybody, let's all say thanks to David. Thanks, David. That said, let's get on to Math Science History's last Flashcards Friday episode of 2025. But before I begin, a quick word from my advertisers. It's Flashcard Fridays, and today I'm going to talk about something quietly universal about what humans do when the year begins to slow down. Across cultures, across centuries, when the days grow shorter and the nights stretch long, people gather. They sit closer together. They talk more. They tell stories. They pose questions that do not have obvious answers. Riddles appear, almost like clockwork at the end of the year. Oftentimes in deep contemplation, because life is much like a riddle. Not because people suddenly become bored, but because the human brain enters a very particular mode when time feels suspended. The end of a year, whether marked by winter or ritual, creates a psychological pause. Work slows down, travel becomes harder, outdoor labor decreases, the world narrows, and attention turns inward. Cognitively, this is when reflection takes over. Humans become more tolerant of uncertainty. We revisit unfinished thoughts, we replay conversations, and we think in metaphor instead of urgency. Riddles thrive in this mental environment. A riddle is not a demand for speed. It is an invitation to linger and to hold two ideas at once. It is the opportunity to resist the urge for immediate resolution. And when the answer finally arrives, it does not just feel correct, it feels complete. Anthropologists, historians, and cognitive scientists have all noticed the same pattern. Riddles are disproportionately clustered around seasonal transitions, especially the turning of the year. These are not random amusements. They are cultural tools. Riddles teach patience, reward listening, and encourage humility, because the answer is often obvious only after it has been revealed. Perhaps most importantly, riddles train us to sit with ambiguity without panic. At the end of the year, that skill matters because endings are rarely clean. As many of us have realized, the years close with unfinished plans, unresolved conflicts, grief, and celebrations. It's the cycle of life, and though life insists on these loose ends, the human brain doesn't really like them. So we pose riddles. And once you begin looking for them, you realize riddles are everywhere, especially at the end of the year. They show up not just in books or games, but in rituals, storytelling traditions, and quiet evenings. The forms may differ, but the purpose remains remarkably consistent. So rather than cataloging every culture that used riddles, it is far more revealing to look at how they were used. Across the world, winter riddles tend to fall into three broad patterns that are not based on geography, but rather on intention. First, riddles can be used as wisdom contests. In some cultures, riddles were serious business. In Norse and Germanic traditions surrounding Yuletide, riddles were not party games, but rather tests of fitness for leadership and survival. In the medieval ages, knowledge was power and wisdom was dangerous. One of the most famous examples appears in the Poetic Edda, possibly written around the 13th century, where Odin disguises himself and challenges the giant Vafthrudnir to a riddle contest. In this contest, the two exchange increasingly complex questions about the origins of the world, the fates of the god, and the nature of time itself. The final question Odin asks is one that only he can answer. The question that he asks Vafthrudnir is, what words did he being Odin, whisper to his son Balder before placing him on the funeral pyre? The giant pauses and realizes, too late, that he has been speaking with Odin himself, and the contest ends in defeat. What matters here is not the mythology, but the structure of this riddle. I love this riddle because the contest is about boundaries, about knowing when knowledge becomes identity, and about recognizing that wisdom is not just information, but context. The context here is that winter was the season for these contests because winter demanded foresight. A poor decision could mean starvation. A week later could doom a community. Riddles trained people to think beyond the obvious, to anticipate consequences, to respect the limits of their own understanding. In these traditions, riddles were gatekeepers. They separated cleverness from wisdom, and they were deadly serious. Second, riddles can be used as communal bonding. In many African and South American traditions, riddles served a very different function. Rather than elevating one clever individual, these riddles were posed to groups. The riddles were collaborative. They included a call and a response, and they were designed not to stump, but how to teach how thinking together works. In West African societies, riddles were often shared in the evenings during periods of agricultural downtime. One person posed the riddle, but the group solved it collectively. In doing this, elders passed down environmental knowledge, and children learned how metaphors worked. So the goal was not speed, but participation. Similarly, in Andean cultures, the traditional Quechua riddles, known as the Watuchacuna, were used to train perception. Objects were described through sound, motion, and relationship to the natural world. A riddle might describe an egg as something white that wakes before the sun, or rain that's something falls without feet. These riddles often appeared during seasonal transitions, when the rhythm of labor changed and attention could turn to teaching and storytelling. And these traditions did more than that. They also provided an emphasis on shared intelligence. It was a communal riddle where no one person or group wins. Instead, success belongs to the group, and the answer matters less than the process of listening, proposing, revising, and arriving together. So in a very real sense, these riddles trained empathy, and to solve them, you had to imagine how someone else saw the world. And no doubt, empathy is a skill that is particularly needed at the end of the year when we are all reflecting, contemplating, and celebrating. The third pattern appears as a quiet reflection in cultures that treat riddles as a form of disciplined calm. For example, in German-speaking regions, riddles were exchanged during Advent evenings and the Rauhnächte. The Rauhnächte is still celebrated in Germany and other parts of Central Europe. It's not so much a holiday as it is a cultural tradition where people observe the time between Christmas and Epiphany. It runs between December 24th and January 6th, and it could be a time for introspection, journaling, reflecting, going on hikes with loved ones, storytelling, and of course, beer. Because you can't have Rauhnächte without beer. Actually, you can't be in Germany and not drink beer because it is so good. But the Rauhnächte was believed to exist outside ordinary time. It was a pause between what had been and what would come next. Riddles during the Rauhnächte were not competitive. They were contemplative and often centered on light, darkness, transformation, and patience. Similarly, during the Islamic Golden Age, riddles known as the Alghaz flourished during Ramadan nights. After fasting during the day, evenings became spaces for intellectual recreation. These riddles were mathematical, linguistic, and logical. They honored the idea that disciplined thinking could itself be a form of devotion. In China, the same reflective relationship to puzzles became part of public life through the Lantern Festival, where riddles were written directly onto lanterns and displayed in streets and marketplaces, effectively turning entire neighborhoods into a shared puzzle board. Solved aloud and often collectively, these riddles blended wordplay, symbolism, and literary reference into a form of communal participation that emphasized reflection over speed and presence over competition. When these practices are considered alongside similar traditions elsewhere, a broader pattern begins to emerge. Across cultures, riddles consistently function as a mental slowing down mechanism rather than a test of quickness or dominance, offering the mind something structured yet gentle to hold onto during periods of seasonal or social transition. Instead of stimulating adrenaline or urgency, they encourage sustained attention, patience, and careful thought. Seen in this light, it becomes clear that modern holiday puzzles serve the same underlying purpose, even though their forms have changed. While we may no longer gather around a hearth to exchange riddles by firelight, the instinct that gave rise to those traditions has not disappeared. Advent calendars, for example, divide anticipation into small, manageable increments by revealing a single piece of information each day. While holiday crosswords and board games re-emerge during a time of year when families are more likely to pause, sit together, and engage in shared problem solving. So it is here that the deeper value of riddles becomes most apparent, by asking us to slow down, to tolerate uncertainty, and to imagine perspectives beyond our own. Riddles quietly cultivate skills that extend far beyond entertainment. They teach us to listen carefully, to remain open to solutions that may be simpler or more shared than we expect, and to recognize that understanding often emerges through patience rather than force. These capacities form the foundations of empathy, making riddles not only a feature of holiday tradition, but a subtle form of moral and social training. For that reason, it feels appropriate to end this season and this episode, not with a declaration or a conclusion, but with a question, a riddle. It's a riddle that reflects the values these traditions have carried quietly around the world and across centuries. So here is my final math, science, history riddle for 2025. I grow when I am given away. I weaken when I am hoarded. I cannot be forced, yet I can change the world. I have no language, but I am understood everywhere. I end wars without weapons. I heal wounds without touch. I am older than nations and younger than every child who learns me. What am I? The answer, of course, is not something you solve alone. It is something you practice, and that may be the oldest puzzle tradition of all. The answer, of course, is love. Not as a slogan and not as a sentiment, but as a practice. Love is something that we carry forward with us into the new year and through our lives, not because it makes things easy, but because it gives us clarity about what matters when things are hard. It is what allows us to hold grievances without letting them calcify into bitterness, and to approach forgiveness not as forgetting, but as choosing not to be ruled by harm. Love gives us the ability to see beyond our own immediate perspective, to recognize the humanity in others, even when disagreement feels sharp or personal. It helps us pause before reacting, listen before judging, and choose responses that move situations toward resolution rather than escalation. Love becomes a kind of compass, quietly orienting us toward what is right, even when the path forward is so uncertain. When practiced consistently, love also dissolves fear. It does not eliminate risk or uncertainty, but it gives us the courage to engage with the world anyway, to seize each day with intention rather than retreating into defensiveness or doubt. It reminds us that meaningful progress, whether personal or collective, has always depended on our willingness to act with care, empathy, and generosity, even when those qualities feel vulnerable. Perhaps that is the final lesson hidden inside the oldest riddles and puzzles we have shared across cultures and centuries. The most important answers are rarely solved once and set aside. They are answers we return to again and again, shaping how we think, how we listen, and how we treat one another. And that may be the most enduring puzzle tradition of all. With that being said, thank you so much for listening to Math, Science, History throughout 2025. I genuinely appreciate your listenership, and I genuinely appreciate you, my friends here at Math, Science, History, the listeners, students, professors, general math enthusiasts. You are all so wonderful, so cool, so awesome. The emails, the messages, and the community that is Math, Science, History. I love you guys. And I haven't been drinking, I swear. I really do love you guys. So you all have a wonderful, happy holiday season, a wonderful, happy new year. And until January, carpe diem.